Citadel Prime hung in the void like a jewel of impossible geometry, vast rings and spires of gleaming metal that rotated in perfect synchronization around a core of crystalline material that pulsed with energy. It was the political and cultural heart of the Free Species Alliance, the culmination of 10,000 years of galactic cooperation. A meeting of the Council's Emergency Response Committee was in session, though emergency had become an increasingly frequent descriptor in recent decades. Ambassador Kalen of the Xyler, with his characteristic calm demeanor despite the shimmer of stress across his iridescent skin, was reviewing the latest reports from the border monitoring stations. The Cthar swarm's movements have become more coordinated, Kalen said, his melodic voice carrying the gravity of the situation. 3 more systems have gone dark in the past month alone. The containment protocols are holding, but only just. General Grok of the Orlon military caste snorted, the sound rumbling through his massive, armored form. Containment is an illusion, Kalen. The swarm adapts faster than our defenses. They consume entire star systems to fuel their expansion. We should be planning for inevitability, not hiding behind diplomatic terms like containment. Elder Lyra, ancient even by the long-lived Vliss standards, fixed her compound eyes on both of them. We have survived threats before. The Cthar are powerful, yes, but they lack the sophistication of a truly sentient species. Their hive mind can be. The chamber's alert system cut her off, bathing the room in pulsing blue light. The holographic display at the center of the room shifted, showing multiple unidentified vessels appearing seemingly from nowhere, directly within Citadel Prime's secure perimeter. Impossible, breathed Kalen, rising to his feet. Invasion. Grok's hand moved to his ceremonial weapon. Identification, demanded Lyra, her attention fixed on the display. The ships violated every aesthetic principle of known galactic design. They were asymmetrical, crude in appearance, with obvious patchwork repairs and lacking the elegant unified design philosophy of Council vessels. But what drew every eye in the room was their exterior, covered in dark, violet-black stains that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The stains formed horrific patterns across their hulls, and even through the holographic display, everyone recognized the distinctive bioluminescent signature of Cthar matter. Full lockdown, ordered Grok, his military training taking over. Deploy all defensive grids and scramble interceptors. Wait, said Kalen, studying the readouts. These vessels aren't behaving aggressively. They're maintaining position. Scan results are coming in, announced the chamber's AI in its neutral voice. Confirmed. The biological material on the hull exteriors is Cthar tissue. However, it appears to be dead, fused to the hull materials. Lyra's ancient face contorted with confusion. Dead Cthar? How is that possible? Nothing kills Cthar without. Additional data, continued the AI. Long-range scans have detected a massive energy signature dissipation at the edge of Cthar territory, consistent with the destruction of a major swarm fleet. Timestamp correlates with the approximate arrival time of these vessels. Silence fell over the chamber. They're transmitting, said Kalen, after a moment. The holographic display shifted again, showing the interior of one of the strange vessels. 3 bipedal beings stood before the camera. They appeared similar in basic morphology despite variations in coloration and secondary sexual characteristics. Their bodies were covered in close-fitting garments that seemed to serve both protective and symbolic functions. Greetings to the Galactic Council, spoke the central figure, a female with dark skin and striking eyes that held a depth of exhaustion barely masked by determination. I am Ambassador Eva Rostova of Earth, representing the United Human Systems. We come with urgent news regarding the Cthar swarm and request immediate audience with your governing body. The room erupted into chaos. How did they breach our security perimeter? Demanded Grok. They fought the Cthar and survived, whispered Kalen. Lyra remained silent, her ancient eyes narrowing with suspicion. The being called Rostova continued. We understand our arrival is unexpected and potentially alarming. The biological material on our ship's hulls is evidence of our recent engagement with the Cthar at the Tartarus system. We have critical intelligence to share that impacts the survival of all sentient life in this galaxy. Time is of the essence. Kalen looked at his colleagues. We cannot ignore this. It could be a trap, countered Lyra. If they wanted to attack, Grok said with pragmatic assessment, why announce themselves? These humans have done what we believed impossible. They crossed Cthar territory and survived. They deserve at least the courtesy of being heard. The decision was made. With extreme security protocols in place, the Council would meet these strange newcomers whose ships bore the stains of impossible victory. The meeting chamber chosen for the encounter was the smallest of the Council's formal spaces, designed with multiple emergency measures and evacuation routes. A delegation of 6 Council members, including Kalen, Grok, and Lyra, awaited the arrival of the human representatives, surrounded by security personnel and scanning equipment. When the humans entered, the first impression was their smallness. Despite being roughly similar in height to the Xyler, they lacked the ethereal presence of Kalen's species. They appeared solid, dense, lacking any bioluminescence or exoskeletal features common among Council races. Ambassador Rostova led the group, flanked by 2 companions, a stern-faced individual in what appeared to be a military uniform, a younger human with alert, curious eyes that darted around the chamber, taking in every detail. Ambassador Rostova, Kalen began formally. I am Ambassador Kalen of the Xyler, current chair of the Emergency Response Committee. With me are General Grok of the Orlon, Elder Lyra of the Vliss, and representatives from Mavari, Taludri, and Jushin peoples. We welcome you to Citadel Prime, though we must express concern over the manner of your arrival. Rostova inclined her head slightly. Thank you for meeting with us, Ambassador Kalen. Allow me to introduce Admiral Jian Li, Commander of Earth's Frontier Fleet, and Dr. Eris Thorne, our xenolinguist and anthropologist. The military figure, Admiral Li, gave a curt nod, his face revealing nothing. The younger human, Dr. Thorne, smiled with obvious excitement despite the tension. Your ships bear the marks of Cthar biological matter, said General Grok, dispensing with pleasantries. Explain. Rostova glanced at Admiral Li, who stepped forward. 3 Earth weeks ago, Li began, his voice steady and measured. Our frontier detection network identified a massive Cthar fleet assembling at what we now know is the Tartarus system. Our intelligence indicated this was a staging ground for a major push in a new territory. Your territory, as we've now confirmed. We engaged the swarm at Tartarus with our entire available frontier fleet. You deliberately engaged the Cthar? Elder Lyra's voice was incredulous. We've been fighting them for decades, Rostova interjected. Earth encountered the Cthar swarm nearly 50 years ago at the outer reaches of our expansion. We've been in a continuous state of war ever since. The Council members exchanged glances of disbelief. The marks on our ships, continued Admiral Li, are Cthar biological material fused to our hull plating during extreme close-quarters combat. Our tactical doctrine emphasizes direct engagement, including ramming maneuvers and boarding actions. When their biomatter is subjected to certain energy signatures and temperatures, it liquefies and then fuses to metals. We've been unable to remove it completely without compromising hull integrity. Boarding actions? Repeated General Grok, his skepticism evident. Against Cthar vessels? Li's expression hardened. Yes, our Void Marines are specifically trained for internal ship combat against Cthar drones. The room fell silent as the Council members processed this information. You claim to have been fighting the Cthar for decades, Elder Lyra finally said, her voice heavy with skepticism. Yet the Council has no record of your species or your conflicts. The Cthar have been at the edge of our known space for over a century, yet you suddenly appear claiming to have defeated a major fleet when the combined forces of the Council have barely managed containment. Forgive me if I find your narrative convenient. Rostova remained calm. We understand your skepticism, Elder. Earth is located in what you would consider the opposite spiral arm of the galaxy from Council space, with the Cthar territory between us. We had no knowledge of your existence until recent years when we managed to capture and analyze enough Cthar communications technology to detect signals from beyond their territory. We've been fighting alone, believing ourselves to be the only advanced civilization facing this threat. The battle at Tartarus, Admiral Lee added, was not a decisive victory. We destroyed their staging fleet, yes, but at catastrophic cost. Over 60% of our engaged forces were lost. We used the disruption to punch through their territory with our fastest remaining ships, following the coordinates extracted from Cthar navigational data. We came here directly, bypassing standard first contact protocols because we believe the swarm is preparing a major offensive against both our civilizations. Dr. Thorne spoke for the first time, their voice softer but precise. We've brought extensive data on Cthar biology, psychology, and tactics, compiled over 5 decades of conflict. We have reason to believe they're adapting their strategies based on what they've learned fighting humans. The data we've gathered could be vital to your defense preparations. General Grok leaned forward. Show me your battle records from Tartarus. Tactical data, engagement protocols, losses sustained. Admiral Lee produced a small device. Limited tactical data only. We're prepared to share enough to verify our claims, but certain technologies remain classified until formal alliance protocols are established. Admiral, cautioned Rostova. They need to understand what they're dealing with, Lee replied firmly. The data transfer was approved after security scans. The council members watched in silence as the Battle of Tartarus played out in tactical holographic display. The sheer scale of the conflict was staggering. Hundreds of human vessels engaging thousands of Cthar ships in a chaotic, brutal, slugging match unlike the precise, formation-based warfare of council militaries. Your tactics are unorthodox, General Grok finally said, a new respect in his voice. We work with what we have, Lee responded simply. Elder Lyra remained unconvinced. This proves nothing except that you possess sophisticated simulation technology. If you truly fought the Cthar as you claim, how have you survived this long with such primitive ship designs? I propose a compromise. Kalen interjected before tensions could escalate further. A limited inspection team could examine one of the human vessels to verify their claims, while we analyze the data they've provided. Rostova and Lee exchanged glances. We can accept a limited inspection of the cruiser Dauntless, Rostova finally agreed. It sustained heavy damage at Tartarus and contains no classified systems that aren't already compromised. General Grok may lead the inspection personally, along with a small team of his choosing. Agreed, said Kalen. In the meantime, Dr. Thorne, perhaps you would be willing to share some cultural information about humanity? It would help us better understand your people's perspective. As the meeting continued, suspicion and hope battled in equal measure. The galaxy had suddenly become a much more complicated place. The inspection team, led by General Grok and consisting of military and scientific experts from 3 council species, approached the human cruiser Dauntless with extreme caution. The ship loomed before them, its asymmetrical design jarring to eyes accustomed to the elegant, organic curves of council vessels. Up close, the dark stains on the hull were even more disturbing. Patches of blackish-purple material that seemed to absorb light, with faint traces of bioluminescence still pulsing weakly in some areas. Admiral Lee met them at the docking port, accompanied by a security detail of what must be the Void Marines he had mentioned, humans in heavy armor with integrated weapon systems. The interior of the ship was a shock to the council delegation. While council vessels featured spacious corridors and harmonious design to maintain psychological well-being during long voyages, the Dauntless was utilitarian to an extreme that bordered on barbaric. Corridors were narrow, with exposed conduits and piping. Bulkheads were reinforced with multiple redundant systems. Every junction featured defensive choke points with hardened positions and integrated weapon mounts. The entire ship was designed not just for combat against external threats, but for intensive internal fighting. Your entire vessel is designed as a battlefield, observed a Teludri scientist, running sensors over a section of corridor where scorch marks and impact damage were visible. Our boarding tactics are persistent, Admiral Lee explained matter-of-factly. We learned early that fighting only outside our ships was a losing strategy. Every human military vessel is designed to be defensible internally, section by section, even after catastrophic breaches. The ship's medical bay was particularly revealing. Unlike the holistic healing chambers of Council vessels, the Dauntless featured what could only be described as a trauma factory. Dozens of stations designed for rapid surgery, cybernetic interface, and emergency life support. The technology was a confusing mix of seemingly primitive mechanical systems alongside remarkably advanced biotechnology and neural interfaces. Your medical technology began as Xyler scientist, examining a neural regeneration unit, is focused on returning soldiers to combat as quickly as possible. Lee completed the thought. Full healing comes later, if survival permits. General Grok, who had been silent for much of the inspection, finally spoke as they reached the ship's command center. Your people fight as if extinction is the only alternative to victory. Lee's expression didn't change. That has been our reality since first contact with the swarm. The ship's logs, carefully edited to remove classified information but still containing battle recordings and crew accounts, painted a picture of desperate warfare conducted with iron discipline. Casualties that would be considered catastrophic and unacceptable by Council standards were listed as within operational parameters. Tactics that amounted to suicide missions were documented with cold efficiency. When the inspection team returned to Citadel Prime, their report created a storm of controversy among the wider Council. The humans were simultaneously less advanced than Council civilization in many technological areas, yet terrifyingly more advanced in others, particularly in combat medicine, material sciences optimized for warfare, electronic countermeasures, and the psychological conditioning of their military personnel. Meanwhile, Dr. Thorne had been conducting a parallel diplomatic mission, sharing carefully selected cultural information about humanity with interested Council members. Art, literature, philosophy, and history, heavily curated to emphasize humanity's capacity for cooperation and creativity while downplaying the long history of internal conflicts that had shaped their military doctrine. Humans have always found their greatest unity when facing external threats, Thorne explained to a gathering of Council cultural attaches. The Cathar forced us to overcome centuries of division. Now we hope to extend that unity to include the Council species. Elder Lyra, attending one such session, was not convinced. Dr. Thorne, your presentation is skillful, but it raises more questions than it answers. If humanity values peace and cooperation, as you claim, how do you reconcile that with the militaristic society evidenced by your ships and Admiral Lee's tactics? Thorne's smile was sad but genuine. With respect, Elder, we value survival first. Peace is a luxury that requires security. We hope to learn more balanced approaches from the Council once the Cathar threat is addressed. Ambassador Rostova spent her time navigating the complex political landscape of the Council, balancing between demonstrating humanity's strength without triggering fear and showing willingness to cooperate without appearing weak. It was exhausting, delicate work, complicated by Admiral Lee's growing frustration with Council bureaucracy and security protocols. They debate while the enemy prepares, Lee complained during a private meeting in their secured quarters. Every hour spent in diplomatic niceties is an hour the swarm uses to adapt. We need them, Admiral, Rostova reminded him. Earth cannot face the full might of the swarm alone. We've proven we can hurt them, but not that we can win. I'm not convinced the Council can win either, Lee countered. Their military response protocols are ossified. Did you see their fleet formations? Textbook maneuvers, unchanged for centuries. The Cathar will tear through them. Then we need to help them adapt, Thorne suggested. Share enough of our tactical doctrine to improve their chances without compromising Earth's security. Rostova nodded slowly. A calculated risk. Let me see what I can. The station's alert system interrupted, bathing their quarters in pulsing red light. All personnel to emergency stations, announced the station AI. Cathar Scout Force detected entering the perimeter defense grid. The three humans exchanged glances. "It begins," said Lee grimly. The Cathar Scout Force, a dozen biomechanical vessels shaped like predatory sea creatures from some nightmare ocean, appeared with the suddenness that characterized their FDL technology. They bypassed the outer sensor network through methods unknown to Council defensive strategists and emerged dangerously close to Citadel Prime's inner defense perimeter. The Council's rapid response fleet mobilized according to established protocols, which immediately revealed their fatal flaws. Ships from different species operated under separate command structures, each following their own tactical doctrine. Communications lagged as translation protocols struggled with specialized military terminology. Formation maneuvers designed for aesthetics as much as effectiveness left critical vulnerabilities that the Cathar immediately exploited. From the observation deck, where they had been escorted for their safety but effectively contained, the human delegation watched with growing alarm as the Cathar systematically dismantled the outer defensive screen. Their testing responses, Admiral Lee observed, his professional detachment masking his concern. Probing for weaknesses, reaction times, communication gaps. "The Council forces aren't coordinating," Thorne noted. "Each species is fighting independently." Rostova turned to the Council security officer assigned to them. "We need to speak with General Grok immediately. The Cathar are employing new tactics we recognize from Tartarus." The officer hesitated, caught between protocols and the obvious crisis unfolding. "Now!" Rostova's voice carried the full weight of her authority. "Or you can explain to the Council why you prevented us from sharing critical tactical information during an attack." The connection was established, and General Grok's massive form appeared on the communication display. "Ambassador, this is not the time." "General, you're facing a swarm intelligence probing attack." Lee cut in, military to military. "They're cataloging your response patterns for the main force. Standard Council formations are playing directly into their analytical algorithms." Grok's expression shifted. "Explain." "Break formations. Randomize responses. They're expecting Council standard defense protocols. Give them chaos instead." Grok hesitated only a moment before turning to issue new orders. On the tactical displays, the Council ships began breaking their elegant formations, adopting seemingly haphazard positioning that nonetheless provided overlapping fields of fire. The Cathar advance faltered momentarily, but quickly began adapting. "It's not enough," Lee muttered. "They're already compensating." He turned to Rostova. "Ambassador, request permission to deploy our remaining fighter squadrons from the Dauntless. Non-classified systems only." Rostova weighed the diplomatic implications against the immediate threat. "Do it, but maintain Council command authority, technically." Lee nodded and opened a channel to the Dauntless. "Commander Park, deploy Valkyrie Squadron. Tactical freedom within defense perimeter. Acknowledge Council command, but use your discretion." Within minutes, 12 small craft launched from the Dauntless, fighters unlike anything in the Council arsenal. Where Council combat vessels were elegant and specialized, these human craft were compact, heavily armored, and bristling with weapon systems. They moved with a coordination that suggested either advanced AI assistants or pilots with exceptional neural interfaces. The human fighters didn't engage immediately. Instead, they maneuvered through the battlefield seemingly at random, gathering data, probing the Cathar formations from multiple angles without firing a shot. "What are they doing?" demanded the Council security officer. "Hunting," Lee replied simply. The fighters suddenly converged from multiple vectors, targeting a specific Cathar vessel that appeared no different from the others. Their weapons, kinetic and energy-based systems used in precise combination, bypassed the vessel's defensive fields through methods unknown to Council military science. The targeted Cathar ship convulsed, its biological components separating from its mechanical structure as precision strikes severed key connection points. "Command no down," reported Lee with clinical detachment. "Picking secondary targets." The human fighters scattered before the Kthar could effectively respond, only to converge again on a different target moments later. Rather than attempting to destroy the Kthar vessels completely, a task beyond their limited numbers, they systematically targeted communication nodes, propulsion systems, and what appeared to be sensory organs. Most surprisingly, one team of fighters performed a boarding action, attaching to a disabled Kthar vessel and deploying what must be Void Marines into its interior. They're capturing a drone command unit, Lee explained to the astonished council observers. Highest priority objective. Within 20 minutes, the Kthar scout force was in disarray. 3 vessels destroyed, 5 crippled and drifting, the remainder retreating in what appeared to be confusion rather than tactical withdrawal. The human fighters returned to the Dauntless, with one towing a large component extracted from the Kthar vessel they had boarded. In the council emergency session that followed, Admiral Lee and Dr. Thorne presented their analysis of the captured Kthar command node, with Ambassador Rostova translating the technical jargon into diplomatic language. This wasn't a random scout force, Thorne explained, displaying data extracted from the Kthar biological computers. It was specifically tasked with analyzing Council defense protocols and testing countermeasures developed after their defeat at Tartarus. The main swarm is preparing a major push into Council space, continued Lee, displaying navigational data. Based on these coordinates and timing markers, we estimate they'll launch within 2 standard months. They're committing approximately 60% of their total known forces. The Council chamber erupted in alarm. How can you be certain of these interpretations? Challenged Elder Lyra. Kthar communication systems have resisted our best analytical efforts for decades. Because we've had to become experts in Kthar psychology to survive, Thorne replied. Their hive mind uses a symbolic language system that mirrors their biological organization. We've had 50 years of desperate necessity to motivate our understanding. More concerning, added Lee, is evidence that they're specifically adapting to counter both human and Council tactical doctrines. They're learning from each engagement, evolving their strategies with increasing speed. Ambassador Kalin, who had been silent throughout much of the presentation, finally spoke. What do you propose, Admiral? Lee looked to Rostova, who nodded. A joint defense initiative, Lee said, combining Council resources with human tactical doctrine and special warfare units. We can't match the swarm's numbers, but we can disrupt their command structure and force them to fight inefficiently. You're suggesting we adopt human military methods? Elder Lyra's tone made her distaste clear. I'm suggesting we survive, Lee countered bluntly. The Kthar don't care about your ethical concerns regarding our tactics. They care about consuming every living thing in this galaxy. The debate that followed lasted for hours, spilling over into days as the full Council became involved. The human delegation's demonstration during the Kthar incursion had shifted the balance of power among the Council factions. General Grok's pragmatic bloc gained influence, while Elder Lyra's traditionalists found themselves increasingly isolated. Ambassador Kalin worked tirelessly to craft a compromise that would allow for cooperation while maintaining the Council's core principles. The result was far from perfect, but it was a start. The Council has voted, Kalin announced in a formal session attended by representatives from all member species. By majority decision, Earth is granted provisional recognition as a sovereign power within galactic society, with probationary status pending further cultural exchange and alignment with Council principles. He continued, furthermore, the Council approves the formation of a joint defense initiative against the Kthar swarm, incorporating human tactical advisors and specialized combat units under overall Council strategic command. The last proviso, keeping humans under Council command, had been a necessary concession to the traditionalist faction, though Ambassador Rostova had secured enough exceptions and caveats to give Earth's forces significant operational freedom. As the formal session concluded, the human delegation gathered on an observation deck overlooking the vast expanse of Citadel Prime, with its elegant spires and rings now bristling with hastily upgraded defense systems. Will it be enough? Asked Thorne, gazing at the stars beyond the station. even with Council resources and our tactics. Admiral Lee's face was grim. It gives us a fighting chance, more than we had before. They still don't fully understand what we are, Rostova said quietly. What Earth had to become to survive the swarm. Would you have told them everything if you could do it again? Thorne asked. About our history, our internal conflicts, how those shaped our response to the Cathar. Rostova was silent for a long moment. No, some truths are too sharp to handle without cutting yourself. They see our blood-stained ships and think they understand the price we've paid. They don't. They can't. They will, Lee said with certainty. When the main swarm arrives, they'll learn what we already know. That survival sometimes requires becoming something you never wanted to be. Thorne smiled sadly. The irony isn't lost on me. We came seeking allies against monsters, only to be seen as monsters ourselves. Not monsters, Rostova corrected. Just survivors. And now, hopefully, so will they be. Below them, Citadel Prime continued its eternal rotation, its lights reflecting off the hulls of the human vessels docked at its perimeter. The dark stains of Cathar biomatter remained visible, a constant reminder of humanity's violent arrival and the uncertain future facing the galaxy. The war against the Cathar swarm had entered a new phase, with new allies whose methods were as frightening as they were effective. The final question remained unanswered. Had the Council's decision to bring humanity into the galactic community saved civilization, or merely introduced a different kind of predator to the stars?